Welcome, everyone. I'm Gordon Carr. I'm the chair of the Hingham Planning Board. I'm going to open this June the 4th meeting of the Hingham Planning Board. I will open it by reading an introductory statement. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify me at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that I, as chair, may inform all other participants of said recording. Anyone?
All right,
I will go ahead and introduce my colleagues on the planning board and then turn it over to my colleagues on the ZBA to open their meeting. And then I will take back the con. So by way of roll call, planning board participants tonight: Rita De Silva.
Here.
Tracy Shriver.
Here.
Gary Tondor-Fick.
Here.
And Gordon Carr is still here. So with that, Jed, I will let you go ahead and open your meeting. And I think you can, as I said, just refer back to the language that I read.
sure. All right, this is a nice surprise. I didn't know I was sharing this one. So I don't. Should we repeat the same language or just no? Okay. So
no, I think you just go you can just reference the language that I read. It's fine.
Okay. So my name is Jed Rucho. I'm chairing the ZBA meeting on today, June 4th, 2024, and refer back to the language that was used by the planning chair regarding this meeting being held remotely. And also want to introduce the members of the ZBA that I have here with me. We have Michael Mercurio.
Here.
And we also have, what am I missing?
Mario.
Mario. It's not appearing on my.
Hi, here.
There you are. And are there any other introductory matters for me to take care of?
Nope, I think that's it. So I will go ahead and read in the project and do a little bit of table setting here for purposes of the conversation. So this is an informal review. The Hingham Municipal Light Plant submitted a request to the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals of an informal review for a proposed public utility building enclosing an electric substation and related site work to be located on a portion of the property located at 0 Old Hobart Street, Assessor's Map 106, Lot 4, in the official and open space district. So as I said in the intro, this is an informal review, substantially at the request of the select board, because HMLP, which is planning to build the substation, which she'll tell us about in a bit, would be exempt from formal local approvals as a public utility doing a project benefiting multiple communities. But given the type of the project, and because the property has not yet been conveyed from the select board to HMLP, it was an opportunity just for us to review the project, for the public to hear about the project, and for us to make some informal recommendations, conditions, suggestions to the select board to include in that conveyance when the time comes. So we will spend a little bit of time learning about the project, asking some questions, getting a sense, and then seeing where we are as far as recommended conditions. And I believe that is all of the instructions, Emily, unless I missed anything to get us started.
Nope, that was great.
Good enough. So who do we hear from first? Tom Moorhan, are you gonna lead, or the consultant's gonna lead? Who do we hear from first?
think he has to unmute himself.
I'm sorry. I couldn't get the phone
That's all
off.
right. I didn't want to spring it on you. I just thought I'd start with you and then you could assign either to staff or consultants.
Yeah, so I'm Tom Moran. I'm the general manager of Hingham Light. Tonight I have Tracy Adamski with me. Tracy's going to be doing the presentation of the substation. Rob Shapiro is on our team. He's our one of our council. Deirdre Lawrence is on the team. Mark Fahey is assistant general manager. He's also on the call. And Tom Converse is our engineering consultant from LIG.
Okay. So Tracy, you're going to lead?
I'm going to lead. If I could share my screen, I have a short presentation that we can go through and then open it up for Q&A.
You are enabled, Tracy.
Great, thank you. Okay. So we'll start here. First, thank you all for setting up this joint meeting to hear this about this important project for Hingham. So we're just going to go through a few slides talking about a general overview of the full project. Today's focus and the focus of the package that we had submitted is on the Hobart 2 substation, which is located over at the transfer station site. Discuss the need for this project, a little bit about the history on the site selection and how we landed on this particular site. Talk a little bit about what are the components going into the substation, and then open it up to discuss questions. And as you pointed out at the beginning of this meeting, is the end result is we anticipate that you'll be providing recommendations, which will be then submitted to the state boards, the Department of Public Utility and Energy Facilities Siting Board. That will be, in consideration as this project goes through that review process. So overall, this project is a new underground utility line, electric utility line that interconnects with the grid through an Eversource lines in Weymouth, and that extends through Weymouth into Hingham and ends at what will be a new substation at the transfer station site. The purpose of this line is, first and foremost, to improve the reliability of HMLP's power supply. So the power supply for the whole community. And there's added benefits that will be able to address the town's climate action plan and electrification goals. We'll go into that in a little bit more detail in the next slides. So currently, Hingham's power is supplied by two lines that come in on the same right of way. And some of those lines are actually on the same poles. So if one of those poles were to go down, or a few of those poles were to go down, then Hingham would be without power potentially for an extended period of time, because that could take some time to get those towers back up and the lines back up and running. And unlike, if you were on like an Eversource or a National Grid, they have other substations and other distribution lines and transmission lines that they can turn off one and then connect through a different avenue. Right now, those are the only two lines that are coming in, and they are parallel, and in some places, exactly like on the same poles. So this project would provide an underground line, so a third extension cord, so to speak, that would connect Hingham's power back to the grid. So if something did happen to those overhead lines, you have that redundancy of having the additional underground line in a different right of way that would serve Hingham. And as part of the analysis, there's other non-transmission approaches, such as looking at, the possibility for increased solar or battery storage, but those don't provide, the adequate power and capacity for the length of time that would be needed for, and to address HMLP's reliability issues. And then there's the added benefit for capacity. So once we get into the site design, you'll see that there's a space for a new transformer that gives you the option to, add additional capacity that can help meet Hingham's and the state's climate action goals. So as you know, a lot of the climate action goals are geared towards weaning us off of fossil fuels, but that means more electric needs. So the site selection was a pretty extensive process. The goal was to find a site that was located in the vicinity of the existing Hobart substation, which is, as we'll see in one of the upcoming maps, is located kind of within the transfer station and adjacent to the transfer station parcel as it is. So there was a number of town-owned parcels that we reviewed in the Hobart Street area. We eliminated looking at Article 97 protected open space properties, but reviewed 10 sites, including this transfer station site. Some of you remember we initially identified a triangle parcel just to the northwest of the transfer station. And, as we went and had public meetings and received community feedback, it was apparent that there was a lot of concerns with that particular location. So we went back and reevaluated the siting options, had some additional conversations with the select board and the DPW, and identified this small triangle of land that is part of the transfer station property. And that is the site that we are looking at for the substation. And that's the topic of today's conversation. So just to give people a bit of an overview. So here's Hobart Street. The transfer station parcel is in this olive green. The existing Hobart substation is this pink box here. It's actually a separate lot that is pretty much surrounded by the rest of the transfer station. And over here is that triangular piece that I spoke about earlier that we had initially looked at. That was, again, we were looking at things that had adequate size, weren't constrained by a lot of wetland resource areas or other environmental concerns. And so eventually we landed on the substation site here. Here's an aerial. Again, this shows you where the existing substation is. Here's the access road into the transfer station. Here's the main operation facility of the transfer station. The entire parcel is about 9.7 acres. We're looking at, a portion of it here that's currently undeveloped on the far eastern side. And, currently it's a forested embankment. But the goal here is to have minimal impacts to the transfer station operations, but still be able to have, enough space for what is needed for the electric substation. So as you saw, like the substation site is bordered by Hobart Street and the transfer station access road to the north. Rural reservation, which is conservation land, is located immediately to the east. To the south is the capped landfill, and to the west is the remainder of the Hingham transfer station. In the area that we're looking at, the total disturbance is approximately 31,000 square feet. That includes the development of the substation as well as some subsurface stormwater management features. There is some work that's being proposed within buffer zone to BVW. There's bordering vegetated wetland that's located just to the north of the access road for the transfer station. But most of that is or most of the work that at least is within the 50-foot buffer zone is separated from the wetland by the road and is primarily associated with grading and not building. So the proposed facilities include a new gas insulated switchgear substation. That's an enclosed structure. There's circuit breakers and bus work and protection and communication equipments that go along with the substation. There is a retaining wall because, as I mentioned, this is an embankment. So we are proposing a retaining wall to give us, a flat buildable area. There's a stormwater management system that's designed to meet the Mass DEP requirements. And then there's space for both a future transformer and a future switchgear. And we are, as you noted, in an official and open space zoning district, and are meeting the dimensional requirements to the extent that we can. And again, because this is the official and open space zoning district, we do have some leeway with respect to some of the setbacks because we are adjacent to additional municipal properties. So this is an allowed use within the official and open space district and complies with the purposes and standards of the district. The goal, again, is improving Hingham's electric infrastructure reliability. Our stormwater system includes, it's kind of treatment trains that includes deep sump-hooded catch basins, a proprietary water quality treatment device, and subsurface infiltration. There are going to be remote monitoring capabilities, so this will limit the amount of traffic, even though there's very minimal traffic associated with the substations, but HMLP will be able to monitor the facility remotely, and it meets the design standards and criteria generally for an electric substation use. Again, we went through an extensive assessment of properties within the vicinity of the existing Hobart substation. We've taken a fair amount of input from town officials, the abutters, the public, and the DPW as we work towards this site and this design. And it's in an area that is, again, outside of the normal operating area of the transfer station. We will work with, HMLP will work with the DPW during the construction process so that, we can time some of the activities so we can avoid some significant impacts to the transfer station operations. And once everything is up and constructed, no additional traffic is anticipated for the site. Again, there's already the existing substation that's located on the western end of this property. So, when HMLP comes out to that site, they would be out to the substation as well. So in general, here's our, I'll say our triangle of land that we're looking at. The gray line here is the proposed retaining wall. The building is located here on the north end of the site. And then we have spaces available for both the transformer and future switchgear. This location will be surrounded by a chain link fence. We are also within this area are proposing a couple of additional storage containers because the DPW currently has a few storage containers that they use up in that location. So we're providing space for them for that. This dashed outline here is the location of the underground infiltration system. And this is the grading and drainage plan. And I guess I didn't mention, so our wetlands are over here off on to the northwest of the site, and our 50-foot buffer is here, and our 100-foot buffer is this dashed line. So those are the work within buffer zone areas. But we will have, some grading into the slope here. The retaining wall allows us to minimize, the grading impacts beyond the edge of the wall. And in this, you can see, have a better view of where some of the collection system for the stormwater is coming and the infiltration system. And that will connect into existing infrastructure that eventually outlets towards the wetlands to the north. And we do have developed some renderings to, give a better, I guess, kind of image of the site. So again, this shows what that future switchgear and transformer would look like, as well as the GIS structure. And we just have a couple different views. And then this isn't the end all. So we are in the early stages of the permitting process. We will be going in front of both the Energy Facility Siting Board and Department of Public Utilities for the transmission line, and they'll be reviewing the substation as well. There are exemptions that from zoning that are allowed through the Department of Public Utilities process, but we will still be in front of both Hingham and Weymouth Conservation Commissions for work within their jurisdictional areas. Because we're on the transfer station site, we will need a Mass DEP post-closure use permit, and then other approvals as necessary as we kind of work towards refining designs. And just a reminder that there is a website for the Hingham Electrical Infrastructure Reliability Project. So updates on the project are provided here. And there's also a way to provide comments and questions that are then distributed to the team so that they can be answered. So if people have other questions or want to keep up to date on the project, this will be kept up to date as the project proceeds. And that's our presentation for today. I'm happy to pull up, any of the plans or anything and open up to your questions.
Excellent, thank you. So let's do this. Well, Tracy, do me a favor, just scroll back to one of the renderings, just so we have that on screen. We may toggle to some other documents too, but at least something that's fine. Perfect, thanks. So this is, since this is a joint meeting between Planning Board and ZBA, Jed, if it's all right with you, I'm going to open it up to any member of either of those boards. Just raise your hand. I think we can do this in a relatively orderly fashion to ask any questions that either members of the boards might have, and then we can open it up to the public. And first on the draw is Gary. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Gordon. Appreciate it. Thank you, Tracy. Very nice presentation. Very clear. Just a couple of questions on feasibility. Was wondering on the other sites that you might have considered in terms of feasibility. And I asked the question in the context of the secondary 13.8 distribution lines that would go to feed new development, let's say, for example, in South Hingham or areas that are away from this site. Was that taken into consideration as to the location here? I know you have an issue of the underground line coming in and the length of that and the cost, but I'm just curious, did you consider the transformers site down on Cushing Street?
We did. This is Tom Morahan. I apologize. I can't get my my video to work. I couldn't get my computer to work, so I get on the phone and I get on the computer, and now the video doesn't work. But we did look at multiple sites. We looked at coming in from through Abington, coming in that way, and possibly siting a station over in the industrial park over in that area to kind of better feed the that side of town. But as we looked at the transmission systems that we would get the feed off of, that transmission system on that side owned by National Grid would have had to have been upgraded at a cost before doing anything of, I think it was 10 million or $14 million prior to doing any of this other work. So that quickly fell off the plate due to the cost of the project.
Mhm. I understand. And then the second question I had was the structure that I understand the siting now, the relative to the transmission. The retaining wall is an open joint, dry laid precast concrete block wall. And I'm wondering, and the site is next to a wetland area that's which feeds into the areas that are low going down by French Street, et cetera. I'm wondering with the future switchgear and transformer locations up on the grade, how is any kind of containment done there for any PCBs or any cooling fluids for these transformers down the road?
Yeah, there wouldn't be any PCBs.
None. Okay.
Yeah. The oil in the transformers, there would be containment around the transformers to collect any oil that should there a leak develop around those transformers. But that would be down the road when those transformers are actually installed.
I see. And then in terms of maybe a question for the engineers, the longevity life cycle of these kinds of open joint walls. I've heard that they're 50 years, and I was just wondering, in terms of the life cycle analysis, was a poured structure looked at for longevity, or are you comfortable with these lasting quite a long time?
So until we do our full geotech analysis, we're probably not going to know whether it's 100% we're going to go with a modular product or a cast in place product. We typically go with the modular stuff first because it's so convenient and easy to build. But once our geotech is completed, that'll really tell us if we can do that or if we have to go to a cast in place wall.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Great. Michael?
Hi, thanks for letting me ask a question. So I was reading in some of the background about the double circuit poles that there are a number of potential fail points, and I wasn't aware of that. Is there any plans as part of this to mitigate any of that, or has that already been looked at and I'm just not aware of it?
So this project is to bring a third line that's obviously underground from the Weymouth, by the skating rink in Weymouth. And once we bring that second line in, the other two lines will remain as they are, and with the thought that this one line could carry the whole town if we lost those two lines.
Thank you. That's what I assumed. I was more thinking of in the interim before this is permitted and built. It's probably not going to happen this calendar year, and I just was wondering if it's just so close to being this happening that it's not worth exploring that, or if there's minimal risk that's already been evaluated to a potential failure point.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've had this system since 1986, and we haven't had many failures of the system. The concern really becomes, a train derailment, so the Greenbush line, when this was built, was inactive, now active. So there's a concern there. Train derailment could damage one of those poles. But we haven't had reliability issues with this system the way it is. There really is no other alternative in the meantime for us to make it any more reliable.
Great. Thank you very much.
So let's see, anyone else from the
I do.
read?
Okay. I just wanted to ask about also the water again. I didn't understand. So it's going to go down the road into across the street, not through the road, but through a filtration system. Could you explain that again?
Yeah, so the stormwater management system, thank you, Tracy. Right now, it basically, all the stormwater runoff from the site runs down the embankment and then into the street, the substation area where the existing drainage system is. So what we're doing is we're basically adding a couple catchment devices like a trench drain behind the wall and then some catch basins, down in the substation yard itself. And so collecting it in those structures allows us to more easily meet the state standards because we can run that water through it's called a proprietary water treatment unit. And it basically takes contaminants and sediment out of the water and then puts it into the infiltration system, which are those chambers shown, the little squares. And from there, it's allowed to infiltrate as much as possible based on the soil type. We won't really know until we start digging out there. But the nice thing about that system is that it's modular. So if it can get smaller, we can make it smaller. If it needs to get a little bigger, it can get a little bigger. Anything that doesn't infiltrate, there's an overflow right off the side of that system that will take, right there, and take that anything that's not infiltrating down and put it into the existing system. Now, part of the state standards say that what we put into that existing system has to be less than is going there now for the 210 and 100-year event. So that's really the goal of the infiltration system, is to kind of infiltrate the net increase in runoff that's associated with the project and meet the state standards.
Another question is, what's up in that area right now? And I for some reason I can't think about, isn't there something that gets thrown away up there, furniture, or I have no idea, but
I think the containers that would be right up in this picture here, those containers you see there.
okay.
I think they put the mattresses in those containers.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, it's
So-
bulky
It's not
waste, that sort of thing, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not
so-
waste or anything. Okay,
So
Okay.
proposing putting those two containers at the end of the wall there, so that.
right. And like Gordon said, there's no waste or anything up there in that area, so it'll be fine to build on. I think it's a great site. It's away from homes, and I think it's a good site. And thanks, Gordon.
Thanks, Rita. Other voices from either planning or ZBA. I'm just scrolling away, so if I don't see a hand, just go ahead and speak up. Tracy or Mario? Going once. Good. So with that, then I will go ahead and see what questions there may be for members of the public. Justin, I think I saw your hand up first.
I jumped right in.
You did.
If given in the current grid connect situation that we have that is vulnerable to that outage of train derailments, what are the first bad things that start happening in the town? Besides just it's always bad when the power goes out.
As far as, I mean, if we would have a failure on that line, or on the transmission line that took out both circuits, the town would be flat. There would be no power. Yeah.
The kinds of things I'm thinking about in my question are like pump stations, town emergency responder capability, and I'm imagining, oh gosh, you can't get it fixed for 2 weeks. You know, what are the first things that really start being very, very challenging? And like getting, I'm not sure what the triage order for the town would be.
I think the triage would be, getting generators, procuring generators to get, a lot of those facilities, fire department, police department, town hall do have generators. So, they could run on generator if need be. A lot of businesses, obviously residents would not have generators. So
There's a certain time of year variable to that too, wouldn't there be, Tom? Right, like winter objectively worse than
winter would,
other times?
winter would definitely be worse. We would have, people, if God forbid we had an event that took out the line and we couldn't get repaired for a couple of weeks, which, probably highly unlikely, but, a week, to get the line back up and running is not out of question. You would see frozen pipes and things of that nature as a result of it. we did back in, I think, 2017, we did have a winter event where there was one of the lines had to be taken out on I think it was on New Year's Eve, and the temperature that night was, 10 below or something. It was unusually cold, and Eversource had to take out one of the transmission lines, which left us on, just one line coming into town. Again, if something happened to that line while the other line was out, we would be flat again. So it's not just an event on one of those towers that happens and takes out the towers. It could be an event on the Eversource system when we're on one line that takes out the whole town.
Great, thanks. And just to prove the chair's rustiness, for the public, when you're going to speak, just say your full name and address for the record. My familiarity with Mr. A. Warren made me forget that. So.
All right, 2 Riverview Road, Justin A. Bourne.
Thank you. So I think the next hand I saw was Susan's.
Hi, did Susan Wetzel, 239 High Street.
She's talking.
I had a question, Tom, with regards to the cost. And my question is, back in March, when you held a joint meeting for Hingham and the town of Weymouth, there was a figure that you quoted for the cost of this project at that time. And at that time, you said that that was the cost that we currently estimate it to be, but you did say that this was a project that was not going to happen overnight and costs could increase. So could you let the folks in the community and the zoning board and the planning board, give them some idea of what kind of costs that we're looking at, and also from a community perspective, who is going to pay for this?
So again, this project is all for the town of Hingham, so that it's the Hingham ratepayers that will pay for this project.
Gonna be on this a while.
Right now, the estimated cost of the project is $98 million. A portion of that will be paying Eversource for that over 40 years for a portion of that. The other portion will be, we'll have to bond for it. We just went through a rate increase in last year. So we had one increase in July, one increase in July or August, one increase in February, and we'll have another increase in January of 2025. Those increases should cover the cost of this project going forward. That was the whole part of that whole rate review that we did. The consultant, took the numbers that we had at the time and used that to figure out what the new rate should be to cover the cost of this project.
I thought that the figure that you gave, I know what the figure was because I wrote it down at the meeting in Weymouth, and you said at that time in March it was $110 million. And when I was on the light board meeting, we had a discussion about that, and that was the figure that was bounced around in March. So you're saying It's been reduced?
Yes, our engineering consultant, LIG Consultants, has looked at the pricing on the project again and redid the cost estimate. And right now, today, we're at 98 million.
So if we have, so this cost will be borne by us over what period of time? And what do you estimate the average increase in cost is going to be for your ratepayers, of which I think we have around 8,000 ratepayers? Am I right or wrong on that, Tom?
We have 10,500 meters.
Okay.
So
those are the people that will be paying for this?
Correct. Yep.
So do you have a cost estimate how, I mean, we've
So this-
already had 18 or 20% rate increase already, so what
So
is
that,
the
yeah, that rate increase should cover the cost of this project going
Well,
forward.
the 20% or 18% that we are already currently paying, that's all we'll have to pay more? in this
According,
project?
when we had the rate study done and they had the numbers we had at the time which was 110 million. When they did the rate study, they said we needed to increase our revenue by 18% to cover the cost of this project. So we did that over 3 years, knowing that this project won't start for, at that point, at least 2 years out. So that rate increase should cover the cost of this project. going
So,
forward.
so can we rest assured we won't be getting 18% again?
I mean, we don't know what energy costs are going to be in 10 years, 20 years. I can't guarantee that there's never going to be another rate increase in Hingham again. That would be unwise for me.
And again, the cost is out of our area from a planning board perspective, but but I appreciate the question for all of the citizens, those of us ratepayers. Tom, that 98 is the Hingham share, right?
That 98 is the Hingham share and the Eversource share. So that includes
Not the
both.
way, so that's net of whatever Weymouth's
Yeah. So that
piece of the overall project is.
So the Eversource piece of that is, I believe it's 33 million, right? So we'll be bonding for somewhere around, say $70 million or less. We have some cash on hand. So when we go to bond for this project, it'll be, whatever we, out of the 70, whether we have, 10 million or 20 million in cash to put into the project, the rest will be bonded.
Got it. Susan, I'm going to go to Ann Fanton real quick, and I'll come back to you if that's all right.
Sure.
Ann?
Okay, thanks. I live at 46 Ridgewood Crossing. So I'm just a citizen. I'm interested both in the, since I use Brewer Reservation and Moore Brewer a lot. It's good to see the actual drawings, and it doesn't appear that it's going to affect Brewer Reservation or the treed nature along Hobart Street. But I just wanted to ask if there are any impacts.
There should be no impacts to Hobart Street. We do have to put a structure out on Hobart Street for this project, but other than that, there should be no impact for additional tree removal or anything out there.
Well, you do have to put a structure.
We will have to add an additional structure out on Hobart Street. Yeah.
So how big is that relative to, say, the parking area that's in front of Moore Brewer?
More Brewer is up further, right? This would be as you come out of the exit of the station, right where that the pointer is there, somewhere around there where it says Hobart Street. That's where we'd have to install a new structure.
So you'll do your best to preserve as many of the trees around there as possible.
Correct.
That's a nice stretch, that whole stretch of Hobart Street, which is unusually rural for Hingham. So it would be too bad if too many of the trees had to be cut down.
Yeah, we don't anticipate having to remove any trees, really, to be honest with you, out in that area.
Well, and no impact to the Brewer Reservation. The brewer, not the Moore Brewer.
We won't be, again, we'll be removing trees where that slope is there, but other than that, we won't be removing any other additional trees.
Yeah, that's some distance. My other question more has to do with French Street and the timing. I know they said the project would start in roughly 2 years. Things always start a little later than you plan. But the condition of the roadway, which is not your responsibility, from pretty much from the railroad tracks up to past Hobart Street, condition of French Street surface. Now, some of it has to do possibly with the heavy trucks, is very bad. So I would think that the town is going to have to replace the paving surface on that half of French Street, hopefully within the next couple of years. So what I'm concerned about is at what point will the line come through French Street in from Weymouth all along French Street over to Hobart and then tear up the pavement again? Is there going to be any coordination in terms of when the town puts hopefully lovely new pavement surface on French Street and you're obviously cutting into French Street for pretty much its whole length, at least up as far as Hobart Street?
Yeah, I mean, we anticipate, you know, when we do our work or sometime after that, that we will come back and grind and overlay the entire street. Hopefully we can coordinate that with the DPW as far as, you know, their paving schedule. But again, this project is probably a minimum of, you know, 2 years out.
Okay, so you wouldn't just do a cut into the street where, you know, some pavement is put over just where it's been opened up and then breaks up as the winter goes along.
Yeah, typically how it works is, again, this trench isn't, you know, a huge trench like a water trench or something. This is it's a smaller trench. We would do the work. They do about 100 feet a day. They backfill and pave, and then typically there's a plate left at the end, so the work can continue the next day. That pavement would remain there for, you know, somewhere typically from 6 to 12 months, maybe, you know, to ensure that it did settle. If there was some place where it was broken up or a pothole or something, we would come back and pave that, you know, fix it. But at the end of that 6 months, we would come back and we would grind out the entire width of the road and then repave the entire thing.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. So as promised, I'll go back to Susan and then to Rebecca and Peter H. in that order.
Just one other quick question and follow up, Tom. I know that you said that the expense would be totally, I think you explained that the expense would be shared by Eversource. How much did you say? What portion will they cover?
Eversource won't cover any portion of it. We will pay Eversource $33 million to build the tap station in Weymouth. That cost will be borne by the Hingham residents, but that cost will be paid to Eversource over a 40-year period.
So the 33 million, is that included in the 98 million?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so the 33 million, and so all of the construction that will go all along Broad Street into Hingham from the rink up there, all of that expense and everything that goes to Eversource to do that work? Or who does that?
So
will be our work.
Eversource would build a tap station on the right of way in Weymouth. We would run underground from that tap station out beside the rink out onto Broad Street, all the way down Broad through Jackson Square. That we haven't determined what that exact route will be through Jackson Square.
Right.
Up
So
High Street and then down French.
Okay, so at the meeting in March, there was discussion on the part of the residents of the town of Weymouth about why you picked that location and why you didn't do another location, and people didn't understand that. And has that been resolved with the town of Weymouth? Do you have any agreement with them about where this is going to go?
As far as
the location of the line from has that been agreed on with Weymouth?
We have not got an agreement with Weymouth on the exact location through Jackson Square.
Okay, so then the other site the other location that some of the residents were talking about, that is not off the table at this point. Is that correct?
When you say the other route, there's a number of routes that we could take. One is down Broad Street through Jackson Square. The other is down Lake Street through Jackson Square.
Lake Street was one, and then I thought there was one along the right of way in Weymouth for the train to bring that in. There was someone else that brought that up at that meeting. My question is, Tom, I just want to clarify for my own understanding, because I've followed this pretty closely. This has not been agreed upon by the town of Weymouth.
We have not come to a agreement
Okay.
on the route through Weymouth.
And that
And
potentially.
the route being either through Lake Street or Broad Street. Those are the only two routes that we are in discussion on.
Okay, okay. And will there be more meetings then in the town of Weymouth too we can attend? Because the last one we didn't even know about. We found out by accident.
So once we go to the siting board, and I guess Rob Shapiro could probably talk to this better than I can. But once we go to the siting board, there'll be a number of meetings that
Okay.
will be open to the public.
Okay, so, and we'll be notified of that.
Yep, it'll be, and Rob, maybe you can talk to how the notification is done, whether it's through the siting board or through us or.
Yes.
Just one
probably
quick
from the
question,
center.
just one more question, Tom, and then I promise I won't ask anything else. If this site which has not currently been approved by the town of Weymouth, goes to Lake Street, how will that impact the cost?
I believe Lake Street is, it's about 0.2 of a mile longer than the Broad Street route. So
Okay.
there's going to be minimal impact to cost.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to, I'm sorry, Mr. Shapiro, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to just follow up on Tom and clarify a few things. When this project goes to the Energy Facilities Siting Board, which it must, HMLP will provide the siting board what is known as a preferred route, as well as a noticed alternative route. There are two routes, and in fact, one of those routes has a short variation on it. The siting board will review those routes, and they will either approve the preferred route, or they will approve the noticed alternative route, or they may reject both routes. The other thing I think that's important to clarify, there's no requirement for any kind of agreement between Hingham, between HMLP and the town of Weymouth. We have met often with officials in the town of Weymouth. We've held a number of meetings, both on our own and with Eversource, to set out our project. In fact, before we finalized the preferred and noticed alternative route, we met at least 2 or 3 times, 3 open houses with residents and officials and businesses of the town to get their input and explain the project and find out what their preference was. And Tracy Adamski can talk a little bit more about our route analysis, which was comprehensive, included criteria, ranking, etc. But I don't want to leave anyone with the impression that there's that we have to there's some sort of agreement that's going to be coming out. We will continue to work with Weymouth as we will work with Hingham on issues associated with mitigation. But I just wanted to make that point clear.
Thank you, sir. Let's go to Rebecca. If, you're muted if you're speaking.
Muting. Oh, there. Did that work?
Yep.
It does.
Sorry, my apologies. Believe it or not, I'm not tech savvy at all. The gentleman that was just speaking,
Sorry, Rebecca, just name and address for the recording.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Rebecca, 35 High Street, Hingham. Is that good, Gordon?
Perfect. Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry. The gentleman that was just speaking, I didn't catch his name.
Rob Shapiro.
Thank you, Rob. I had a question for Rob, which was, I have my initial point that I want to come back to in a minute, but Rob just piqued my interest with the comment he just made, which was, he said that they didn't need an agreement with the town of Weymouth. And I just wanted more clarification on that. So is that implying that we're going to do what we want to do in the town of Weymouth through eminent domain? Or, I mean, when you say we don't have to have an agreement, that's not our land, it's not our town, we don't pay taxes. How do we have the right to rip up their roads without some sort of civilness and agreement?
Oh no, I hope I didn't send that impression. We
that's what I was impressed with. Sorry, that's why I wanted clarification on that. That was confusing.
No, we would have to go. One of the things that we would be looking for from the Energy Facilities Siting Board was an approval for the line. We would still have to work with the town in terms of, street openings, et cetera, et cetera. Town, we would go to the, as Ms. Adamski pointed out, we will go to the Concom in both Weymouth and in Hingham. I just wanted to make it clear that there's not a specific agreement that has to be executed between the town for the project. That's different from separate permits that we will be required to obtain both at the local and the state level.
Okay.
But to put a finer point on that, sorry, Rebecca, I'm going to interrupt for a minute.
Yeah.
The siting board will determine the route, not the town of Weymouth.
Yes, and it's also important to point out that the town of Weymouth, the town of Hingham, any number of stakeholders will be able to, submit written comments to the siting board. The siting board will have a public hearing in probably both towns where people can, make statements, and they're also allowed, if they meet certain standards, to formally intervene in the case. And it's not a stretch to say that if a town wants to intervene in a case that affects their town, they will be allowed to do so. And as interveners, they would be able to question us, put in their own evidence. I mean, it's an evidentiary, it's a comprehensive evidentiary review, and parties would all have their rights. Again, we don't think it's going to. We hope it's not going to be adversarial. We want to work with the towns, to the greatest extent possible. But the siting board, in answer to your question, it's the siting board that ultimately makes the decision up or down on whether the project can be built, and if so, over what route.
Okay, so
Hence the multi-year process. Yeah. Sorry, Rebecca,
Yes.
go ahead.
that's okay. So to your point, if I'm understanding, if the siting board gives basically the Hingham the green light, but Weymouth does not give it the green light, can the siting board override Weymouth if they just basically, for simple conversation, just say, this is not happening in our town, carte blanche? Can they put the kibosh on it, is what I'm trying to drive at.
I just want to make sure I understand your question. The siting board can turn down any project. If we can't.
Not the siting board. Once the
No.
siting board green lights it and says, yes, Hingham has a reasonable reason for wanting to do this, they've supported their reasons, we agree with it, but then the town says, no, we're not going to do this. We don't want our.
The town of Weymouth.
Yeah.
Right. I think Rebecca's question, Rob, is
Okay.
Can the town of Weymouth block the project?
It's a good question, because one of the things that the siting board statute states is that no state or local permits can issue until the siting board issues their approval. So let's say the siting board issues the approval of the entire line that would go through both Weymouth and Hingham. Weymouth turns us down for a permit. If that's the case, the HMLP can return to the siting board and seek what they call a certificate. In that case, they would be asking the siting board to step in and basically issue all the permits on the local level that HMLP would need from Hingham and Weymouth. That we hope that's not the case, but that option, that route is available.
Okay, so my question, and then I'm going to get back to my original question that I haven't even answered. Let's just say that siting board approves it, greens lights it, Hingham is ready to go, Weymouth puts the kibosh, they're like, nope, not going to happen. We have to go back to the siting person to override Weymouth's decision. What is the added expense in doing all that? Is it attorney fees? Is it just the loss of time? What if this just never comes to fruition? We've already had 2 rate hikes that Tom spoke of. In theory, in preparation for this, let's just say this number never comes to fruition. How much money will we have invested and essentially wasted on this project if it doesn't, come to be?
Another good question. For the primary consequence, obviously, of going back for an override certificate would be delay. That would add time. There would be some additional permitting costs. The siting board, however, does rely on the same. If you have to go back for the second tier for a certificate, the siting board does rely largely on the record of the underlying case. So it's not like they're starting anew. It's a shorter review period, closer to 6 months.
Okay.
But I can go back and check this, but my understanding, and my colleagues can confirm this, I think that as part of our estimated costs for the permitting, we included the possibility of an override.
Okay, and then to just kind of piggyback off this last question is, let's just say that it does go sour and doesn't go the easy route. It goes the harder route. In the end, as being a fellow bordering town to the town of Weymouth, and quite a significant amount of Hingham borders Weymouth in many areas, whether it's through streets that connect or even open space or bodies of water. Is it prudent to go against a town, even if we can get it green lit, in just being a good neighbor and being neighborly? And that if you've got a town that has some whatever their reason is, and they just don't want to do it, is there at a point where you're just like, you know what? We need to respect that. We've gone as far as we can go. And if we push this and just push this through, then we're just being a bully and just not being a good neighbor. And, you know, there's that old saying, do unto others as you'd have done unto you, but it cuts both ways in this case, that, you know, we're going to border each other forever. We have, you know, since the two towns came. You see what I'm saying? What is the benefit in doing that?
Well, I think there's one, yeah, just to kind of like set the stage a little bit. You know, I talked about like, this is a new extension cord to the grid. There's only certain lines that we can connect to, and they're going to be outside of Hingham. So they're going to have to go through another community. I think, you know, as we looked at trying to minimize impacts, part of that is minimizing the length of the route, and the connection in Weymouth was one of the closer routes. So one way or another, if we're going to provide a new line into Hingham, we're going to have to go through another community.
Okay.
Well,
So
that's a truism of the transmission grid. And I guess, Rebecca, I would, not to get into a back and forth with you, but I might make the same argument, right? It's a buried line through Weymouth to provide us much needed redundancy and protection from an electricity providing perspective for the entire town of Hingham. If they just say, tough, deal with your existential risk because we don't want a road torn up for a period of months, not terribly neighborly either, right? I mean, I think that neighborly argument goes both ways. What's being asked of them is pretty low impact from a long-term perspective. And as far as I can tell, no cost to the town of Weymouth. And, you know, a rather significant one for us. So I hear you. It is certainly possible, but for the good working order of municipalities and for the state, transmission lines cross cities and town borders all over the place and must. You know, until we strike, well, I was going to say strike oil, but like until we become entirely electric self-sufficient by community, these questions are going to come up, which is why there's the Energy Facility Siting Board, right? For those, exactly those circumstances.
Which brings me to the first reason I even raised my hand. And I have to preface this by saying I did hop on the call tardy. So this may have been addressed. And if it was, I apologize ahead of time. But in the pamphlet that was in my light bill that I received maybe a week ago now, what was in using the language here, the fundamental driver behind this initiative was reliability issues. And I just wanted to touch on that with whomever would be the appropriate person, appropriate party on the Zoom call, when we're touching on the initial driver being reliability issues. Having lived in this town for 44 years, Gloria back in 1984 was the last time I can think of any significant power outage for any stretch of time. Maybe there have been spotty spots here and there, but in general, for 40 plus years, we haven't experienced this. So why is this?
And that,
I guess.
yeah, Rebecca, that was addressed.
Okay. As I said, I promised that, but it might have been. So
yeah.
Could you, Gordon, give me the 90-second response to that, what I missed?
I'll let Tracy do it, but in sum, all of the power comes on two lines that are on the same poles primarily down the Greenbush train tracks. So that is currently our only connection to the grid. And I think it's been a long time desire of HMLP to create some redundancy and some a second source. Tracy, you can correct my language as necessary.
Yeah, I can, just as far as that goes, So again, when these lines were built, they were built to a certain reliability standard
Mhm.
that has changed over the years. So this line I believe was built in 1986. So those reliability standards have changed over the years. But the other piece of this is as the town, we have a climate action plan that says we're going to be net zero by 2040. We're going to need this additional line for growth, load growth in the future also. So right now, this is a reliability project, but in the future, we're going to need this line for load growth.
Yeah, it's a capacity project
Yeah.
as well. So those were the two reasons.
Can I, Gordon, can I just jump in on that? Can you
Yeah.
see, will this be it though for Hingham, or will you see another substation somewhere else down the line? Where, you know, in 2040, we have to be in compliance with a lot of things, electric cars, or everything. So do you see something else being built down the line?
We don't anticipate anything else being built down the line. You know, as the system grows, you'll see, you know, we might have to put distribution underground or run new distribution lines. But as far as the stations, this should feed the town for the future.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Peter H., thanks for your patience. Just name and address for the recording.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening. Peter Healy, 19 House Street. Just one question here. Have our engineering consultants looked at any opportunities for federal programs associated with, you know, the grid and transmission resiliency programs that are out there? Is that something we've already looked at, or do we qualify for?
Yeah, we did look at, we had a consultant in DC look at the possibility of getting money for this project on the current federal grants that are out there. And, you know, part of the problem for us is that we are so reliable, right? So we really don't have reliability problems in town. So the monies that are set aside for transmission work in this first go around anyway are set aside for people that have reliability problems in towns that meet certain criteria for environmental justice.
Okay, so we probably don't. So what I'm hearing is that for transmission resiliency program, which is one of the Department of Energy programs out there, and the other one is the grid facilitation program, which is all about, you know, improving electricity. We probably are really too resilient already. We're already meeting all those goals. So I just ask that we've looked at it. Obviously, we got the right people in DC to look at that with Department of Energy and their programs. They're very common to look at. So just want to make sure we've looked at that. And again, my question would be, is Eversource doing that in support of the project at all when it comes to what they're going to be building?
That piece of the project will be totally on Hingham Light. So Eversource won't be looking for, you know, someone to fund any of that. That'll be all funded by Hingham Light.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. So I let, not surprisingly, the cost or the route through other towns are not typically part of the planning board's site plan review. But given this informal hearing and given the size of the project, I thought I'd let that conversation run a bit. And just want to see if there are any other public comments, either related to the physical siting of the facility or anything else that came up before we see where we go from here. Hearing none. So I'll stay on it for one final question, Tom. So you've gotten the rate increases for the funding for the project. I'll set aside what happens if the project doesn't advance, what happens to all those rates. We'll just leave that aside for a minute. do you have all the approvals that you need for the to fund the project?
So we would have to go, to town.
Is it the town meeting or the select board for both?
Every town meeting would have to approve the bonding for the project.
Thank you. Helpful clarification. All right, with that, one more time back to ZBA or my planning board colleagues for any final questions. All right. So we do have a few sort of recommended suggestions here to extend to the select board. They don't relate to the bulk of the conversation here because, as I said, the financial stuff and the issues related to the other municipalities are out of our area. Emily, a little guidance. Shall I make my motion first? I don't know if the ZBA will have one as well.
Well, hopefully the board noticed in the applicant's submission as well as in your meeting notes for this evening, you have also some guidance about how this project would more typically be reviewed by the planning board and the zoning board. So were it not eligible for the exemption under 40A Section 3, it would require a special permit A1. And so, we went through the approval criteria if the board wants to just quickly read through those so that the public understands the way the boards looked at this, which, Gordon, as you mentioned, is a little far afield from, some of the discretion. We did the same for the design and performance standards under site plan review, because that would additionally typically be triggered for a project of this size. And there are just a couple of findings there. And then perhaps you could make the motion jointly because it's the same for the two boards. And I think could be presented to the select board jointly.
So the recommendations under the A1 would be consistent with what I have before me for if it was site plan review?
Yep. Yeah, so different findings because it's under different sections of the bylaw, but the recommendations would be the same.
All right.
So we had the use ones laid out first. Jed, I don't know if you have those. They start on page 3.
I do.
So I'll let
All
you
right,
go
so
first.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, so I'll now go through special permit approval criteria and findings as to each. So first off, we have the criteria on whether use of the site is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this bylaw. And on that, we can say the proposed public utility building use is an allowed use within the official and open space zoning district, which is the applicable district, through a special permit A1. Furthermore, the use is consistent with the adjacent electric substation and transfer station uses. On to the next, we have whether the proposed use complies with the purposes and standards of the relevant specific sections of this bylaw. So with one exception, the proposed building complies with all dimensional standards specified in section 4A of the bylaw for the official and open space district. Front yard setback is proposed to be 10 feet where 40 feet is required. However, this distance is measured from Old Hobart Street, basically the access road that runs through the transfer station, which is only partially constructed and primarily serves as the exit driveway from the transfer station. Since the development site is set back approximately 100 feet from Hobart Street, the proposed use is generally consistent with the purposes and standards for the applicable minimum yard dimensions of the bylaw. Moving on to our next criterion, whether this specific site is an appropriate location for such use, structure, or condition compatible with the characteristics of the surrounding area. The site was chosen after an extensive assessment of public and private properties in the vicinity of the existing Hobart substation. The undeveloped area within the boundaries of the transfer station site was selected after input from the town officials, abutters, and the public. The proposed use is compatible with the transfer station, landfill, and the existing Hobart substation uses that operate on the same or adjoining properties. Okay, moving on. Let's see if all right, we have 4 more to go through. Whether the use as developed and operated will create positive impacts or potential adverse impacts will be mitigated. The proposed use of the site as an electric substation will improve the reliability of Hingham's electric infrastructure. Stormwater management best practices will be incorporated to mitigate runoff from new impervious surfaces. Next, whether there will be no nuisance or I should say, there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. And we can say that because the project site is within the transfer station. During construction, HMLP and the contractors will work to minimize impacts to those operations. After construction, the project will not generate additional traffic. HMLP staff will access the new substation in a similar manner and timing as they currently access the existing substation. So no additional vehicular traffic is anticipated. We're down to our last 2. Adequate and appropriate facilities exist or will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use. The proposed project will improve Hingham's electric system reliability and support the town's climate goals. Typical of facilities of this kind, the substation will be unmanned and will not require water or wastewater improvements for proper operation. Facility will be equipped with fencing, safety lighting, and remote monitoring capabilities to ensure secure operation. We're on to our last of the criteria. Whether the proposal meets accepted design standards and criteria for the functional design of facilities, structures, stormwater management, and site construction. The project meets the design standards and criteria for an electric substation use. The stormwater management system has been designed to meet the Mass DEP stormwater management standards through the use of best management practices, including a deep sump, hooded catch basins, a proprietary treatment device, and subsurface infiltration chambers. I think the next piece is yours, Gordon.
All right, so I'm just going to run through the design and performance standards that we would go through during a traditional site plan review with sort of the conclusions that we drew, and then I'll make some recommended conditions. So design and performance standard A is land disturbance, and the total land disturbance consists of 31,000 square feet, including clearing, grading, and construction of retaining wall to allow for a safe and level area for the electrical infrastructure. Project proposes a small footprint that minimizes land disturbance to the extent practicable. The project maintains existing drainage patterns towards the north to the maximum extent possible, practical. B is site design. The proposed work is located in an area of the transfer station where there are no direct residential abutters. C is performance standard of the character and scale of buildings. The proposed structures are consistent with the existing adjacent utility and transfer station uses and structures. D is preservation of existing vegetation and protected trees. The project minimizes clearing to the extent practicable, though incorporation of a smaller footprint substation and use of the retaining wall. Tree replacement within the vicinity of the substation is not proposed for safety and security reasons. The vegetated buffer will remain along the easterly and southerly edge of the development area abutting conservation land, as well as the vegetated area between Old Hobart Street and Hobart Street. E, limit of clearing. The project is designed to minimize clearing to the maximum extent practicable given the site's grading constraints. F is the finished grade. Finished grades will be no greater than a 3-to-1 slope. A retaining wall is proposed to minimize the impacts to the slope and tree cover to the extent practicable. G is stormwater management. The project stormwater management system has been designed to meet Mass DEP stormwater management standards through the use of the best management practices, including deep sump, hood catch basins, and a proprietary treatment device, and a subsurface infiltration system. H is the utilities. The proposed facility is unmanned and will not include drinking water or wastewater facilities. Electric transmission lines, distribution lines, and fiber are proposed to be underground, and the facility will have a wireless fire alarm connection. I is pedestrian and vehicular access and traffic management. The project will use the existing site access from Hobart Street. Due to the nature of the site, existing access is not intended for pedestrian or bicycle traffic. After construction, no additional traffic generation is anticipated, and HMLP will staff will access the new substation in a similar manner and timing as they currently access the existing substation. And then last is J, lighting. The proposed project includes only 200-watt LED Cooper lights for security lighting to limit light pollution impacts. And with that, Emily, I can go ahead and make the joint motion. So I will go ahead and make the joint motion to recommend that the select board consider the following conditions of approval in relation to a proposed public utility building enclosing an electric substation and related site work to be located on a portion of the property located at 0 Old Hobart Street, Assessors Map 106, Lot 4, in the official and open space district. Number 1, a pre-construction meeting. A pre-construction review meeting with the inspection of the erosion control installation and marked limits of clearing shall be required before issuance of a building permit. Condition for consideration 2 is the limits of work during clearing and or construction activities. The marked limit of work shall be maintained until all construction work is completed and the site is cleaned up. All vegetation beyond the limit of work shall be retained in an undisturbed state, and no stockpiling of topsoil or storage of fill materials or equipment may occur within the protected area. Number 3 is the stormwater pollution prevention SWIP plan. Since the overall project will disturb more than 1 acre, the applicant shall submit a stormwater pollution prevention plan to the community planning department a minimum of 3 weeks prior to the start of any work. The select board may require at the applicant's expense the establishment of a consultant fee account to fund the cost of the SWIP review. Number 4, the construction schedule. At least 3 weeks prior to the start of any work, the applicant shall provide a construction schedule and traffic management plan to the community planning department and Department of Public Works. Said construction schedule and traffic management plan shall incorporate assurance that major deliveries and site work will minimize disruption to the transfer station operations. Number 5, construction vehicles. All construction vehicles shall be parked on site. No construction vehicles shall enter the premises before 7 a.m. on any given construction day. Number 6, inspections. Inspections shall be required during construction and prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy of all elements of the project related to the affecting erosion control, limits of work, in the approved drainage and stormwater system installed for the project. The select board may require at the applicant's expense the establishment of a consultant fee account to fund the cost of such inspections. And lastly, number 7, the as-built requirement. Upon completion, an as-built plan must be submitted to the building commissioner prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. In addition to such other requirements as are imposed by the building commissioner, the as-built plan must demonstrate substantial conformance with the stormwater system design and performance standards of the approved project plans. So that is the recommended motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rita. Shall I roll call both boards, Emily?
Yeah, maybe the planning
can-
board first, and then Jed, you can adopt.
And then
the same
Jed can do his
motion.
own. Okay, fair
Yep.
enough. Keep the family separate. Roll call then. Gary Tonderfick,
Aye.
Tracy Shriver,
Aye.
Rita De Silva,
Aye.
and Gordon Carson, aye. Over to you.
Jed, you should have a move and a second for your board as well.
Thanks, Susan. Can I make the motion or should I ask for
Yeah,
someone?
you can make it or accept, you can do it.
Oh, okay. So I so move that we make the same motion that was just read into the record. Do I have a second?
Second. Michael Mercurio, second. Sorry.
Thank you. No problem. That was, I just took a pause there. All in favor?
Michael Mercurio.
Aye.
Aye.
Mario Romania, aye.
And Jed Rucho, aye.
All right. I think that concludes the business of the evening.